family which is leads, the nation which he leads, prospers. The whole of nature is one of sacrifice. This was recognized in India long ago, and they called it yajna. You put ghee in the fire and said swaha, swaha, om swaha. The swaha is only a symbolic act which says, I am continuously sacrificing my little self for the collective. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita, the 3rd and 4th chapters, if you read them carefully, he says, all that happens in this universe and nature is a huge sacrifice. The Purusha Suktam, most of you must have heard about this, the Supreme Purusha, the Lord, is sacrificing himself, as it were, in order to create this world. Yajnena yajnama yajanta devaha. The Lord is constantly sacrificing himself. The mother is sacrificing for the child, the parents are sacrificing for the offsprings, and constantly there is a sacrifice which is going on in this universe. The law of this universe is based upon sacrifice. So, Bhagavad Gita has interpreted everything which is happening in this universe as a kind of yajna, and participating in the cosmic yajna, which is constantly happening in nature outside and inside, harmoniously and happily, is a way for a peaceful life. You willingly, happily participate in this cosmic sacrifice. You can interpret everything as an yajna. What is the source of solar power? Stellar power. Hence, Bethe, the famous Nobel laureate physicist, found out that the nuclear fusion, nuclear fission takes place when a large nucleus, a mass number, splits into two spontaneously. Nuclear fusion is in a very light nucleus like hydrogen. They fuse together to form a helium nucleus, and in the process, a lot of energy is generated. So you can talk about this as the nuclear yajna. The small hydrogen nuclei are sacrificing themselves, their own identity, to form a helium nucleus. The whole problem in management is how you manage yourself. The greatest managers are very poor managers of themselves and their families. I've heard about the wives of managers saying, oh, he's a great management expert, but he can't manage his own wife and children. Because it's very easy to talk about managing others. And mostly people who can't manage anything themselves will talk about management because there's a psychological necessity. Suppose I'm very arrogant. I will always talk about humility. I'm untruthful. I'll talk about honesty. You know what is the psychology? One great Swami told me, are they being hypocritical? No. I feel that I should be reasonably humble. But somehow, my ego doesn't allow it. So I talk about humility to you, and by identifying me with you, I live a life of humility by proxy. There's an interesting psychological necessity so that I can live great virtues. Those who will talk about high virtues are those who have rarely practiced them. Those who practice don't talk about it, because they live it. Now, the idea of sacrifice which I was mentioning, that underpins everything in this universe. Artha and kama, desire and money and wealth which you have, they have to be put in the framework of sacrifice. I can't enjoy at the cost of everybody else. I want to enjoy something, and you also want to enjoy. And therefore, my enjoyment can go on as long as your enjoyment and right to enjoyment is not infringed. It has to stop at the point when it infringes into your right for enjoyment. There is an interesting incident which is often quoted in this context. There is the following. You know, the British people, as you know, they are supposed to aristocratic British, tight-lipped. Some of you must have read the famous book by George Mikes, M-I-K-E-S. He says it's not Mikes, it is Mikes. He was a Hungarian humorist who wrote a series of books. One of the first was How to Be a Brit, a satire in Britain. And he wrote several other books also about the UAE, Arab Republic, he called it the prophet motive. And of Japan, he said, the land of the rising yen. Very interesting books are there. There he says, the British are extremely self-opinionated about themselves, and they usually don't talk to each other unless they're introduced by somebody else. That's the British method. Two British will be sitting there, they will be looking at each other, not talking unless a third person came and said, oh, here he is so and so. Oh, he is, how are you? Then they'll begin to talk to each other. In India, we bump into anybody who is unknown and then keep talking about his family. They think it's not etiquette. There's a story of two British people sitting and staring at one another. And the other man couldn't bear it. Why are you staring at me like this? Sir, I wanted to say your coat is burning from behind. The coat was burning, but since he is not introduced, he will not talk to him. That is the British. And when they take a dog on a walk, they keep talking to your dog. They will not talk to human beings. That is the British aristocracy. The story is a British aristocrat is walking along the road with a dog, constantly talking to the dog, and whirling his walking stick. And another British was coming in front. The stick hit his nose. And he was furious. You can't hit my nose like that. He said, I have every right to walk on this road. You ought to be more careful. I can't be careful. I have equal right to walk on this road. A big quarrel ensued, and at the drop of a hat, they go to the court. They're the British. We are inheriting the legacy, a few million cases in the High Court for nothing. And the PIL, every public has so much interest in saving society, you go on, you go to court. And the judge made a very beautiful statement. The judges were very witty in those days, the British judges. An example also I remember, there was a big riot in a place. Then the sub-inspector who was in charge of controlling the crowds, he was terrible, mortally afraid, he ran away. So the British collector wrote, the sub-inspector apparently thought the absence of body was any day better than presence of mind. And therefore, he was nowhere to be seen near the scene of occurrence. That is the beauty of the English language. So the judge wrote, yes, you have every right to hurl the stick, but your right to hurl the stick ends where the other man's nose begins. Which means you have to sacrifice so that the other man also can enjoy an equal right. So this principle of sacrifice, which restricts positively for common good your own unbridled desire for enjoyment, this principle is called, everybody knows the name. If I tell you, that's it. Called dharma. So dharma is the principle of sacrifice. Dharma comes from dhr dhatu. Dhr means to sustain, to hold. You know what is the modern word? Sustainability. Everybody now talks about sustainable management, sustainable agriculture. And the United Nations has Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. We had the Millennium Development Goals in 2000. And after 10 years, they came out with Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainability is something extremely important for management. You start a company, you go on, can you sustain it? Sustainability is the principle of dharma. Sustain means to hold, from the dhr dhatu, to hold. So what holds a society together? Our ancients discovered society is held together with the principle of dharma, which is the principle of sacrifice. Everybody sacrifices his own little interest for the common good. So you have enjoyment based upon the money and the wealth which you have, but within the framework of dharma. Our ancients were never against enjoyment. It's a mistake to say that didn't allow people to enjoy. Enjoy as much as possible. And the Upanishads and the Vedas constantly praise having so much money. dhanyam dhanam bahuputra labham sadasam vatsaram dirghamayuhu. Plenty of wealth, plenty of money. Mahan bhavati prajaya pashubhir brahmavarchasena mahan kirtya. What do you get? What does the man of God get? You get plenty of money, plenty of progeny. It will come of its own. You may not use it. It will come. It has to come. Because when you reduce yourself to a vacuum, you suck everything towards you. And therefore the religious people are the richest people. Unfortunately, if they become corrupt by that, the whole thing goes. So dharma is the principle by which artha and kama are controlled. Now when you are done with it, then a deep urge comes with the human heart. Is this everything? I have had enough of enjoyment. Some of you are slightly older, you are retired, sir. I have had enough of everything. I have had a wonderful life. I have reached the pinnacle of my glory. Then what? Shankaracharya has a beautiful phrase which he often uses in his poetry. Tadakyam, 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 tadakyam. Then what? Then what? Then what? Then what? What then? You have had this. Then? You have had it. Then what? Then the urge arises. Is there a way by which you can completely become free from bondage of ignorance? Absolutely and completely free. It's called Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti and Paramananda Samprapti. Complete and absolute cessation of sorrow and the attainment of supreme happiness. The happiness which has no opposite. It is not the happiness as against sorrow. It is just pure unalloyed happiness. Called dharma, artha, kama and moksha. So this is the classification which they came up with. They completely classify all human aspirations. Now you can easily see that you can't have anything apart from this. Any desire, any aspiration, any seeking that you have has to be within the four walls of the dharma, artha, kama, moksha, called Chaturveda Purushartha. An example I was giving you. Similarly, sorrow. Everybody is full of sorrow. Is there anybody with no sorrow at all? No? Management people should know how to manage sorrow. They manage everything. I'm afraid of these management people because they don't overcome or conquer or eliminate. Somebody said, if you get angry, I am not able to eliminate it. Don't eliminate anger. Manage anger. Anger management has become a huge word now. You manage everything. Everybody has some sorrow or the other. Can you say how many kinds of sorrow you have? Suppose I ask you, how many kinds of... Oh, any number of sorrows. Can you classify? If you are asked to classify, you will find it very difficult. How the ancient classified. The most important kind of sorrow which you have is the sorrow arising from your body and mind. As those of us who are slightly getting older, you'll have a stomach ache and a headache and a toothache and all kinds of ache. And your mind is also aching most of the time. And I have a terrible insult from somebody else. I cried the whole day. That fellow, how he insulted me before everybody. I can't take it anymore. Sorrow. The body and the mind. It's called Adhyatmika Dukkha. Another kind of sorrow which arises from natural calamities, like what happened in Kerala. Some people interpret, of course, this happened because of somebody else, the God got angry and so on. We do not exactly know, and the environmental activists blame everything in human beings. This happens because you fellow, you destroyed the environment, you cut down trees, and that's why it's happening. Whatever. These kinds of sorrow arise because you have no control over them, the tsunami and the floods, super cyclone and tornado and so on. It's called Adidaivika sorrow, dukkha. The third kind of dukkha is coming from beings, human beings, animals, plants, and the common sorrow which we face, of course, the place Belur from which I come, mosquitoes. They are everywhere. And you quietly want to meditate and read something, and these fellows are coming sitting there. And they're so clever. And this fellow, I was going to... Then they go and sit there. Now what? They can sit there. Mosquitoes are everywhere. Then you have cockroaches, you have ants, you have plants, and you have rats. Those of you who have read the Hitchcock's famous film, have you seen that? Birds. Hitchcock has a wonderful horror film, The Birds. Suddenly the birds took it into their heads that they will come and attack humanity. Hundreds of thousands of them coming and attacking humanity. Then what do? Some years ago, there was a story of snails. Snails invaded a village. And hundreds of thousands of them, you open the wardrobe, there are snails. You open the kitchen, there are snails. You open the bathroom, there are snails. So that the whole village has to be evacuated. So if beings attack us, we can't go anywhere. So it's called Adi Bhautika. Adi Bhautika, Adhyatmika, and Adi Daivika Dukkha. To remove these three, we say Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi 3 times. That is the significance behind this. Now, when you think of human life itself, apart from being leaders of course are human beings. Whether leader is produced, leader is born, leadership is thrust on somebody, these are debates which can go on. There are some fundamental qualities for which you can lead. What are the most fundamental quality of a person who wants to lead? The most fundamental quality is he should not feel like leading. A person who wants to lead can never be a leader. Because the leader is an unconscious way in which his personality is so wonderful that everybody feels drawn to him and they follow him. You have the servant model and all that, which is very famous in management now. I don't know much of management, nor do I find it very fascinating. My friends who are very saying, oh, this is servant leadership. This is there everywhere now. Swami Vivekananda gave a new model of leadership which you can think of and work on if possible. He says, a letter to Alasinga Perumal, his very dear Madras disciple, a leader has to lead like a baby. A baby, apparently innocent, is the master of the household. You think of a little child, and the father may be a great manager, gentle manager, and come with his tie and suits, etc. The baby will come and give him a good kick and say, come on, come and play with me. Go on all fours. And this great gentle man is on all fours, and the baby will ride over him and go around. And the father is excited about the beauty. So what does the baby do there? The baby unconsciously influences the psyche of everybody around them because of pure innocence. Can you be so innocent as a baby, combining it with the wisdom of a sage? A baby, unfortunately, is ignorant as well as innocent. Can you take the innocence part of it and combine it with the knowledge of a person? A person with knowledge is usually self-opinionated and becomes arrogant. Knowledge is something which completely takes you off your moorings, and that's I know. I know is not a bad sentence, but I alone know is a bad way of thinking it. Self-confidence says I know. Arrogance says, I alone know, nobody else knows. Self-opinionation. Can you be innocent like a baby? See, Ramakrishna was one of the greatest example of the baby model of leadership. Sharada Devi, one of the greatest example. Swami Vivekananda, of course, he spoke and wrote. He was such a charming personality. His fundamental characteristic was boyish. You can look at some of his teachings, some of the reminiscences he was like a simple boy, enjoying everything in life. Whenever we go to airports or railway stations, the flight delayed. If it's Indian Airlines, if it's not delayed, you should be very surprised, something wrong with the aircraft. It's delayed by 2 hours, and we say we are fret and fume and you don't know what to do. But look at your children. If you are going with children, they are so happy that it is delayed or it's not delayed. They run here and there and wash everything. Because for them, the compulsion of doing something in time and out of time is not there. This is one thing which I want to point this out to you, because you are all managers in the making, and managers already made, or managers making somebody else managers. This tyranny of time you should seriously think about. I always keep the time 5. I want to start at 6:03, they will always say. And when you make the program, I see the management people doing 6.02. 6.05, as if these 3 minutes are something very important. See, time is important. Of course, you have to go by time. But don't be under the tyranny of time. Time is hanging over you at every point. Nature doesn't bother about time. It goes on in its own way. So a child, if you see, moves and has his being in joy, and joy cannot be measured by time. I have a scene, you enjoy this, I'll give you 3 minutes. And there's a beautiful thing, you enjoy it, I'll give you half hour. So you can't do that. That's why creativity, poetry, literature, these are things which doesn't happen in time. A Rabindranath or a Shakespeare or a Picasso can't be confined within time and say, you have this poetry written from this time, you have this painting done in this time. Even flutists, for example, even musicians, they have their own scale of time. Creativity is something which goes beyond time. So a baby model of leadership is something in which a leader has a personality of a innocence of a baby with the wisdom of a sage and absolutely egoless. This is one thing which I want to share with you. You can also seriously think about this. Whether a person is egoless can really be successful as a leader. We are trained to think that a person has to be extremely dominating. He should have a personality of his own, and he should be able to check everybody under his care. Keep them always under control so that he is the man in control. It's happening now everywhere, and we admire. We admire them because we are slaves. We have been trained to become slaves for more than 1,000 years, and therefore we think a person who has a very dominant personality is a great leader. A person who dominates and controls others is an extremely poor specimen of leadership because he is not sure of himself. If you are sure of himself, you don't have to dominate anybody. Look at how a mother controls a baby. Mother controls the children. A mother controls the children and says, "Hey, behave, come, sit." I always remember the story of the Ambani brothers. Quarreling and going to court and become so bitter. The mother called both of them, gave them a good slap and said, "You are my children, behave. Come." "Yes, mother." What was the leadership there? The leadership is that which unites out of love. Because the moment you know the leader has no axe to grind of his own, the moment you know he has no ego of his own, the moment you know that he gives honor to you and credit to you, you want to obey him out of sheer joy of obeying. The Ramakrishna mission is a great example. The monks here, some of the brahmacharis were coming are highly learned. It is not easy to control intellectual people at all. What happens in a university system, what happens in an education system, even doctors, for example. Every doctor has his own opinion. If a conference of doctors, everybody will say that he has his own opinion. We do not exactly know what is right, but every doctor, every professor thinks he is right. I've been dealing with professors all my life. If a conference of professors, they will say, everybody has his own opinion. Then everything discussed, they'll say, I have a statement to make. That has been already made. I protest. Then I said, what is the issue, sir? I do not know what is the issue. Whatever be the issue, I protest. Because you have to show yourself as somebody who knows. Knowledge is a very dangerous thing. Knowledge makes you arrogant. Knowledge makes you think that you know and you alone know. See how knowledge can mature into wisdom by which you know very, very little of what you should know. Einstein's and Newton's statements are well known. Newton said, I think of myself as a child picking up a pebble here and there when the vast ocean of undiscovered truths is there before me. How little do we know? So child leadership is the leadership in which innocence is combined with wisdom and knowledge, complete cessation of the ego, and gelling with everybody through love. Differences will be there, may be there, they should be there, but there is a core in which we have to find a common interest. There is an ideology which simply draws you. This is where religion and philosophy come in. So many political systems have been tried. You know the famous God that failed about communism. There's a book about God that failed. Till recently, communism, because it's a very good ideology, sacrifice things. Why should I sacrifice? Suppose I have some money and I have some goods and you do not have some. I have earned it by my hard work. Why should I share it with you, you lazy fellow? No, you have to share it with everybody. So the only motivation for sharing can come from something which is beyond mere earthly pursuits. This is where religion comes in. The word religion is a taboo in India, unfortunately, which is the land of religion, because it has been used and misused. Our word for dharma. Dharma is not religion at all. Dharma is a huge, vast concept which encompasses everything. It can be, even enjoyment can be a dharma, called pravritti dharma. What is the core of it? A leader has to believe in something which is fundamental, unchanging, and what we call shashvata satya. This is where faith in something which is higher comes in. Not as a theological doctrine, but as a real, palpable reality which has to be accepted, rationally, scientifically. I'll give you the rationale for it. Everything in the world is changing. Is that right? Correct statement? The huge debate in science and philosophy, what is the most fundamental? Change or constancy? Change or rest? All of you have read the Newton's first law of motion. When you were little kids in school, the first law, every body remains in its state of rest or uniform motion along a straight line unless it is compelled to change its state by an external impressed force. Remember that? 2 marks. Question. So look at that very carefully. Newton does not distinguish between a state of rest and of uniform motion along a straight line. Motion and rest appear to be the same as long as the motion is uniform, unaccelerated motion. So what you call rest is actually motion, provided that the motion is not accelerated. What is fundamental with the rest and motion is a huge debate in science as well as in philosophy and religion. 2 stalwarts in philosophy and religion, one is Gautam Buddha, the other is Shankaracharya. Gautam Buddha said everything in the world is constantly changing. Look at the outside world. Is any particle in the universe at rest? The sun and the moon and the stars and the nebulae? Everything is constantly changing. There's nothing in the world which is at rest. Inwardly, body is changing, the mind is changing, the thoughts are changing, everything in the world is changing. So he said the most fundamental thing in the world is change. Shankara came and said, change has to occur with respect to something which is unchanging. If everything is changing, how do you measure change? Now I ask you a question. You think about it yourself and tell me, is it necessary to have something which is unchanging? Shashvata, call it God, call it Brahman, call it by any name, which doesn't change. Is it necessary to have it at all? Buddha said it is not necessary. And he created a religion, interestingly, without the idea of God and the soul. He said there is no Atman and a soul, because the soul is also changing. And what you call God as an unchanging entity doesn't exist because everything is changing. Where is he? Is he also changing? If he is changing, he is not worth the God's name. So everything in the world is constantly changing. What is the necessity of having something which is unchanging? What is your take on this? Is it necessary to have something unchanging? It is necessary because, apart from philosophy and religion and science, psychologically your life will have no meaning What gives life meaning? A leader, why I'm talking about all this is because usually leaders in society, I don't know about management people, they are so busy things they don't even have time to think. A leader should be a deeply contemplative person. You should look back and think constantly about what's happening. You should find time so that you can fall back and think what is happening, what am I doing. It is the vision which he projects which is put into action. An action-oriented leader can never be a successful leader. He has to be a thought-oriented, knowledge-oriented, vision-oriented, wisdom-oriented person. So he has to deeply think about what I am trying to do. That's why in religion as well as in some of the political ideologies, they have a think tank who do not actually act. You know, Karl Marx never went into politics. He simply wrote a book. He gave us some extraordinary thoughts, and these thoughts completely changed the psyche and the way of thinking of human beings. Power of thought is something which we have not really recognized. If you ask a leader, oh, I don't have the time to read anything, then you can't be a leader. You have to find time to stop and think, reflect and change. The busybodies masquerading as active and effective go-getters, that is the language used now, can never be leaders. You don't have to do something. You have to think hard and get this done. So thought has to precede your action. In India, the Sankhya philosophy talks about sattva, rajas and tamas. A leader of tomorrow has to be a sattvic leader and a rajasic or a tamasic leader. The Gita, 16th chapter, Gunatraya Vibhaga, then 17, 18 chapters, 14th chapter, elaborately discusses the idea of the guna. They call it the guna dynamics these days. Many people are doing research on Gita management and so on. A sattvic leader is somebody who is calm, collected, thinks deeply, and without excitement he goes on working. We always think that you should be excited about things, you should be feverish, you should be extremely passionate about something to be able to achieve it, you should be achievers. We don't need achievers, we need thinkers, we need lovers, who people deeply love and think and do. And achievement is a product of what you think and do. If achievement is something which drives you, you'll always be trying to show achievement rather than actually do it. It is just like, our students used to ask me, what is nishkama karma? Doing karma without the motive. Then what motivates you? It is the goal orientation which really motivates you. This is one conflict which I always had with management friends. You should project a goal and 10 years hence, where will this company be? And then come on, good. You don't project a goal because projection of the goal happens from the present. Projection of a goal happens, which will happen in future, is conditioned heavily by the present. I always make fun. Oh, you have to have goal orientation, projection of the goal. Where will I see this company 10 years hence, 5 years hence? They have a PowerPoint and the curve goes here and there. Everybody claps. Oh, this is the target-oriented achievement. You know all the game. So I used to ask them, 10th of September 2001, there should have been several conferences in the Twin Towers in New York. There must have been, the huge towers. And there must have been conferences in which people should have been asking, where will you see our company 5 years hence? Where was the company one day hence? 11th of September. You know the story. So human life is so flimsy, so uncertain. Don't too much project into goals, but do what you have now. This is a new concept which is coming in management, the power of now, living in the present and moving on. So Buddha said, from moment to moment to moment, J. Krishnamurti also, those of you exposed to Krishnamurti's teachings, you know, how you move from the present and the moment to moment to moment, keep achieving it because of the moment, this moment is what is powerful. Transformation can take place only in the present. What is the logic? That which is past, or that which is going to come into the future, both of them have to be brought to the present for you to be able to think about it. I think about it now, what happened yesterday. It is not the past but the now. I think about it now, what is going to happen to me tomorrow. The now is what is important. Now, if you think change is a fundamental law, and unchanging something really doesn't exist, can't be really found out in nature. You tell me which is unchanging. If nothing actually exists which is unchanging, what will be the consequence? This method of proof in science, in mathematics, is called reductio ad absurdum. You know the logic. Reducing to an absurdity. Suppose a theorem is given to you, class 10 mathematics, which you have forgotten long ago. Prove this theorem. One way of proving it is, assume that the theorem is not correct. Then go through the steps. The consequences which will follow will be absurd. And since you have ended with an absurdity, the theorem is proved because the opposite of it leads you to absurdity. It's called reducing to, it's a logical way of proving it in mathematics and science. Let us take that method. Suppose you assume God doesn't exist. Suppose you say nothing permanent exists. Suppose you assume there is nothing which is constant, unchanging. Everything in the world is constantly changing. Nothing which is unchanging. What will be the consequence? One simple funny consequence will be, after the lecture all of you go home. Where are you? I'm in Saidapet. Where are you? I'm in Tambaram. You go to your place and say, your house is not there. What happened? Oh, it was here just a moment ago. Now it has moved to some other place. How will you feel? It looks funny, but if you really believe everything is changing, this could happen. You always believe there is something unchanging so that your life becomes meaningful. For life to be meaningful, you have to assume that it is something which is fundamentally unchanging. If everything is changing, where do you put your faith on? You can't have faith in anything. Everything is changing. There is a story, of course, incident which happened actually, of a great mathematician. His name is Wiener, Professor Wiener. He was from the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a very famous institute in USA, as you know. As most of the professors are, he was very absent-minded and constantly absorbed in mathematics. They had shifted their home. His wife told him, you see, Professor Wiener, don't drive back to the old home. This is the new address. This is the new telephone number. He said, no, don't worry, I remember. He put the slip in his pocket. He goes to his office. Suddenly a mathematical problem strikes him. Frantically looking for a piece of paper, finds one in his pocket, scribbles something. After a half hour to find out that the method wouldn't work. Out of sheer desperation, he threw the slip somewhere and went on working. In the evening, drives back to the old home, only to suddenly remember that my wife told me in the morning that the new home we have moved. Where is the slip? Slip is gone. Then a bright idea struck him, mathematician. A small girl was standing there. Say, everybody knows Professor Wiener. He is so famous. They asked this girl, my dear kid, can you tell me where Professor Wiener has moved? The girl smiled, Dad, Mom knew you will forget. She kept me here. Later on, this lady, when she grew old, she was interviewed by the television. Is this incident true? She blushed and said, no, Dad was not that bad. That means he was reasonably bad. So if everything is changing, then life becomes miserable. Life will become absolutely meaningless. Your kids are changing, or bank balance, you put something in the balance in the bank, and tomorrow you say the balance is changing. How can it change? I didn't put money in it. I didn't withdraw money. No, sir, it has changed. Now, it's, of course, this can happen. Everything is changing now. Yes, everything is changed. Consequence, you find out. If everything in the world is constantly changing, is nothing in the world which is changeless and absolute, then life will be complete mess and all of us will be in a lunatic asylum. You'll become mad. You can't have anything. In order to be sane and reasonably healthy and wealthy, you need to have faith in something which is unchanging. You call it by any name. Those people who claim to be agnostics and atheists, it's a fashion actually. Not that they are atheists, but it's a fashion to say, oh, I don't believe in God. Oh, you don't believe in God? Oh, it's wonderful. How beautiful is your faith that you don't believe in God? Their faith is non-belief in God is their faith. And silently they'll go to the Ganesha temple and then so unconsciously you need to fall back upon something. The moments of crisis, where do you go and cry? When everything is deserting you, everything is moving, everything is slipping away from your fingers. Say, oh God, where are you? You have to fall back upon something which is changeless. So a leader of the future has to be rooted in some faith in something which is changeless. I don't say you should be God-fearing, you should believe in personal God, impersonal God, Ganesha, Rama, or Krishna, or Jesus, or Allah, whatever. You have to have a deep-rooted faith in something. Mere belief in nation building and Bharat Mata and goodness will not do. This may be a temporary goal. You know the Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, the great philanthropist in Bengal, he was such an extraordinary person. He was so unselfish. He used to give away whatever he had to everybody. Towards the end of his life, he became an atheist. Completely lost faith in everything, lost faith in human goodness. Somebody came and told him, sir, so-and-so is very critical about you, is constantly finding fault with you and talking ill of you. He said, I don't remember to have done anything good to him. Why is he talking ill of me? He came to such an extent that everybody whom he helped, they all deserted him, went against him. So how do you take this? There should be something which you fall back upon. Those of the leaders who are blessed with faith in God are blessed people, whatever form. An old lady in our village, you can see the party Malar, they are blessed because they are not spoiled by education. They have never gone to school, and therefore the purest faith and purest love they have. And we also had it. Unfortunately, went to school, college, university, management schools, and we have become clever. This cleverness of a leader which is endowed with a bad odor. Leader should never play clever. And now we praise cleverness. Oh, he's a strategist. The word strategy is simply, I feel a hammer is striking on my head. Don't use the word strategy. It is not strategy. It is the way you plan, it is the way you want to take things forward. A strategic management. That means how cleverly you can manipulate things so that the others will not understand exactly what is your motive. What kind of... Remember, truth will always triumph. However clever you may be, however manipulative, truth has to come out. Swami Vivekananda once wrote in a letter, I will compare truth to a corrosive substance of infinite power, which will burn its way wherever it falls, in soft substances at once, in hard granite slowly, but it must. Untruthfulness, manipulations, machinations, maneuvering, which has become the order of the day among all political parties and all leaders. Not that people are fools, everybody understands. When you say, oh, so much is happening, this, all that everybody knows. See, people for some time can buy all that. But ultimately, if you are sincere, from the bottom of your heart, if you say something, it tells. That's why Swami Vivekananda wrote in a letter to Nivedita, religions of the world have become lifeless mockeries. What the world now wants is character. The world is in need of such a character which is one of boundless love, where every word will tell like thunderbolt. When a mother tells a child, you see, don't do that, my dear, don't do that, it's not good for you. The child doesn't argue, come on, give me reasons why it is not good. Tell me, That mother doesn't manipulate. Mother doesn't missionate. She doesn't she has only the good of the child in heart. Can a leader be like that? I have the good of the organization, the good of my, only that at heart. I may have made mistakes. Mahatma Gandhi made several mistakes. But is it mala fide or bona fide? I will say something, nobody will understand, I can manage. People will understand. Don't think people will not understand. But are you sincere? That's why, are you sincere? Swami Vivekananda said, are you sincere to the backbone? For that, you should have a heart and a mind which will embrace everybody. And there are hundreds of people who have different opinion. Do you have the patience to listen to them? Shakespeare once wrote, give all thine ears, but few thy voice. Now the political leadership is everybody is talking, nobody is listening. In a parliament, you can see everybody is talking at the same time. Honorable members, this poor speaker there. Nobody is honorable, highly dishonorable people. Everybody keeps on talking. When they are not talking, they are throwing chairs. Because the leader has to be extremely patient listener. Listener, not that he listens with his ears. He is absorbing what others are saying. Remember, every child, even a peon, even a sweeper may have a bright idea which may transform the entire organization. We had a great monk who was leading us till the other day. He used to talk about his plans to everybody, about how the mission should go ahead and so on. He used to talk about some of the sweepers also and the people. I asked him, why are you? See, some bright idea may come from them also. Because they are operating at the ground level. So keep your eyes and ears open, keep your heart open and try to absorb. And never have the tag of leadership hanging on your sleeves. That I am a leader, I am so and so. See, if you carry your leadership on your sleeves, you always have a bad odor of leadership. Leadership should not have a bad odor. It's just like the body odor. Arrogance and then I am so and so. This I has to be completely eliminated to be a leader. But unfortunately we think, otherwise I will be simply taken for a ride. People begin to, I have to assert myself. You don't need to assert yourself. Look at the leadership of the sun. In the Vedas, the sun is considered a great karma yogi, Surya. It doesn't stay for a moment quiet. Pashya Suryasya Sremanam na tandrayate charans charaiveti. In the Vedas it is said, look at the glory of the sun. It doesn't stop for a moment, doesn't sleep for a moment, continuously goes on and on. So much the sun is giving you in terms of heat and light, never asking for anything in return. Does the sun ask you? I have done so much. I asked my students to make a quick calculation of the amount of power that the sun is giving you per month. Light and the energy. And then calculate in terms of the units which you have to pay. You have to pay for electricity. Then how much money you have to pay to the sun for the amount of energy it's giving you per month or a year. The entire wealth of the whole universe will not be sufficient to pay back to the sun the kind of energy it gives in a month. But it doesn't ask anything in return, it goes on. A leader is something which goes on giving and doesn't ask for anything in return and even doesn't even expect respect. This is another problem of a leader. I was walking there, nobody stood up. Nobody feels like standing up. But they may stand up. Sir. The moment you walk away, the fellow, that's what we see. That's what we see every day. I feel so sad when because people are forced to be hypocrites because this fellow wants. If he says, no, please don't stand up because we are all peers. Then out of respect they will stand up. You can't command respect by putting up notices. From tomorrow, the undersigned has to be respected by everybody. Those who does not respect, disciplinary action will be taken against them. You put up a notice, everybody will get up. Like Hitler, there's a story, you know the story? Hitler was very fond, that's megalomania, always trying to praise himself. it seems he made a rule in every cinema show. Just before the show began, Hitler's picture will be shown, everybody will stand up and say, "Hail Hitler." The story is, somebody has made up the story. Hitler himself was caught up in rain or somewhere, he entered the cinema house. He was sitting there, and Hitler's picture was shown, everybody got up, and they were sitting like that, enjoying it. The man next to him whispered, "I also hate that scoundrel, but safer to stand." A leader is somebody who should not expect respect, should not expect that he should be loved. Even if he's hated, it's okay for you. I have done my part. You don't like me, but it doesn't really matter. I am not interested whether you like or dislike. I have done my part. It's not easy. I'm talking about all this. It's a huge challenge. Somebody doesn't like you, somebody talks ill of you behind your back. You say, you can't force people, not only democracy. Human minds are so different. You will be discussed and scolded and vilified by people who don't like you. So don't expect everybody should like you. In fact, if you are happy in being disliked, you'll be a better leader. Nindaka neere rakhiye angani kuti chhawai binu pani sabuna bina nirmala kare shubhai. Kabirdas says, those who criticize you, you call them, keep them near you. If possible, build a small house so that they can constantly criticize you. What is the outcome? Without water and soap, your entire habits will be completely cleaned. So that means the whole long and short of the whole thing, how much can you be totally egoless? Can you erase your ego? It's very simple, because whatever we achieve is not ours. Who does? Suppose I'm talking to you. How am I talking to you? So many words in my mind stored up. They are somewhere in the brain and they are coming through the mouth through this, some process of neurons transmission. And the sounds are coming out and going to your ear, and the eardrum tympanum vibrates and is carried to your brain and you interpret. It takes more time to discuss and describe than it actually happens. It's Prakriti, it is nature which is acting. That's what Sankhyan philosophy says in the Gita, Prakriti kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma karta hamiti minyate tattva vittu mahabaho gunakarma vibhagayo gunaguneshu vartanda iti matvana sajjate. He says Prakriti is acting, nature is acting. Suppose you have a feast, party, and you eat your fill. Do you apply for a day's casual leave to be able to digest it? Sir, I want to digest the food, please give me 1 day casual leave. Who digests your food? Prakriti, nature digests. So nature has to be worshipped and not you. Whatever achievement you have, that's being worked out by your body and mind, by divine will or by nature. You were placed in the circumstance in which success came. It is not yours. The little ego, which is a non-entity, usurps what belongs to nature and then claims, I have achieved this. You have not achieved it. It has been achieved by nature through your body and mind. Even a simple scientific thinking will make you say that. Your body and the mind has such a wonderful machinery in which these things automatically take place. Suddenly at the household, 10 people came for taking food. And the ladies in the household were terribly perplexed. How do you feed so many? So they had an electric cooker. They put rice and everything and then put on the switch. Within about half an hour, the food was ready. And the ladies said, oh, we are so tired. We had to cook for so many. Did you do the cooking? Did the electricity do the cooking? If electricity did the cooking, electricity should be tired and not you. If God's energy is working through you, Prakriti, nature is working through you, God should be the most tired, but God is never tired. The Bhagavad Gita says, Yadi hyaham navarteyam jatu karman atandritaha. Not a wink of sleep, he goes on doing what he wants to do, because the Bhashakara says he is egoless. Nirankaratvat. So eliminate this one bad odor of the ego, I. Then you will be an excellent person, because you allow nature to operate, God to operate. You become a channel of God's operation, then whatever you do will go right. Why? Because God doesn't make a mistake. Nature doesn't make a mistake. Belief, faith in the laws of nature is what is called science. Faith in that supreme being who operates nature is called religion. You have to have faith in nature. I'll give a small story. You have a meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock, a very important meeting, and you have so many documents to present. And when you sleep, you carry a bunch of candles with you. Somebody says, sir, why is candles? Oh, you see, the sun is supposed to rise at 5, but nowadays, you can't really believe anybody. The sun may not rise. So I have these candles with you. You will say, his brain has gone off. Why? Nature says it has to rise at 5, it has to. That is Prakriti, that is nature. So, in exactly the same way, if you allow nature to function, if you allow God to function through you, then everything will go right. When we were at school, our teacher used to give us geography lessons. Then we used to be utterly afraid. See, what a complicated motion. Earth is rotating around itself. That is bad enough. Then it rotates in an inclined phase, like this. And the moon is rotating around itself and going around the sun. And the earth is rotating around itself, going around the sun. The moon is going around the earth. What kind of motion is this? I said, teacher, sir, if there's a small mistake of about half a degree, then moon will come and dash against the earth. Sir, we will be safe. It cannot happen. Why? Why do you say it cannot happen? When you drive on the road, be extremely careful. Even if you go to the left by 20 degrees, you can be an accident. Oh, should be careful, it may happen. You say it may happen. But it can't happen in nature because somebody else is operating it. The laws of nature are inviolable, it just can't happen. In exactly the same way, if God is operating through you, if nature is operating through you, you shall not make a mistake because He cannot make a mistake. So you sit quiet, relax, tell God, tomorrow there's an important meeting, I have to talk there. Oh God, switch yourself off, He operates. It is possible. It is not impossible, it's just possible. This is what Vivekananda did in the Chicago Parliament of Religions. He didn't have a prepared speech, he didn't know what to say. He says, I went there in the dais, 7,000 people, the elite of America sitting there, I didn't know what to say. Switched himself off, Vivekananda, switch off. Ramakrishna, switch on. Simple. Sometimes, the switches, one up and the other down. Then God spoke through him. He didn't know what he spoke. It is possible. It can be practiced. It can be practiced now. When you begin this practice, you will know you are always driven by a divine power. And your mistakes will be less. And somebody will come and tell you, you see, this is not right, you have to do this. What is required for this? Your mind has to be purified. The mind has to be sharpened. Mind has become unselfish. It's called Chitta Shuddhi. In Vedanta, you saw the purification of the mind. Completely the mind becomes selfless. It becomes pure. Mind Shuddha Manas. Shuddha Manas is something which has no selfish desire. We call it hidden agenda. When you have selfish desire, immediately the whole thing is clouded. So these are the qualities of a leader which people may laugh at, but it is so easy. The greatest leaders of yesteryears have been people who never wanted to lead, never meant to lead, never claimed that they led. Because leadership is happening. Some other power is acting through them. It is not a mystical thing. Just like you eat and food is being digested, just like your heartbeat is happening without your consent or without your knowledge, just like the blood circulation is constantly happening, in exactly the same way, every one of your functions can be operated by surrendering to some power which makes you an instrument to act. I will end with a small anecdote which I thought of. There is an advertisement in the heavens. www.swargaloka.com. Advertisement, what is the advertisement? Drivers required. Car drivers. Essential qualification, should not know driving. What does it mean? God says, I am going to drive, but if I have a person who knows driving, he will start driving himself. I want a person who will simply sit there and I will drive by remote control. Suppose you ask, then he can drive without a driver also. It is possible, but God doesn't want to show miracles. He wants to appear as if he is driving, put that man there, simply keep quiet. We are intelligent leaders, knowledgeable leaders, powerful leaders. So a little clutch and gear, then your accelerator, a brake, accident. If you allow God to function, there will be no accidents. If accident takes place, God knows how to manage that also. Sit there, lift your heart in prayer, oh Lord, I am in the driver's seat. Are you driving? Yes. I am switching myself off. Switch off, sit there, the vehicle goes. The latest trend, driverless cars are coming. He is doing everything by remote control. When I am talking to you, I always ask the question, I am standing here for a long time, how is it that the blood is going up? Have you ever thought about this? Blood circulation by gravity has to come down. Because doctors told me there are hundreds of thousands micro valves in each vein which will allow the blood to go one way and not the other way. So God has thought about the entire thing. When you eat your food, how much you will digest. Suppose you all kind of junk food you eat and you have terrible stomach pain and all that, after some time you ease yourself and the God says, oh my child, why did you eat all this? I find it so difficult to digest your food. God becomes your scavenger, sacrificing a divinity as it were, and enters into your bowels and cleans it every day. Can you think of that? When you go to the toilet, you feel God's presence much more than anywhere else. You say, oh God, you become my scavenger every day. You, the great divinity, have come and cleaned my bowels so that it can be absolutely clean, so I can again take junk food the next day. And he doesn't ask you, my child, yesterday I told you, I warned you, why are you doing? He says, all right, you what to do this fellow. Again I come like a kind, compassionate mother. He does it every day after day he does it. Why don't you lift your heart in prayer and say, oh Lord, thanks, how great you are.